Okay, so I am back from my road rack meeting. Had a lot of fun, but I figured I'd been meaning to make this video because I wanted to give it enough time and see if any other changes were going on in the league. So it looks like everybody's kind of set going into the first game tomorrow. Maybe someone will make a move by Sunday, but it looks like we're kind of getting ready to go into the season, and everyone's kind of got their team ready. So I guess we'll continue our series. So this is 13th video, doing Brian's team finally. I wanted to wait and get there before I got to the team. So number 13, yeah, 13. And yeah, we'll kind of get into it because I had very many thoughts on this team, which is also why I kind of wanted to wait till the end. So 40th nomination, number 40. So right after Robbie had made the jump for his first selection, and two before Justin had made his first selection, you went $34 for A.J. Brown. So here's what I like. I think A.J. Brown's tremendous. I think he was underutilized in Tennessee. I think the best thing to happen to him, obviously, is going to the Philadelphia Eagles. Jalen Hurts, he's been unlocked. A.J. Brown is the undisputed number one. Devontae Smith rolls some coverage away from him, so he's got a Robin to his Batman, and he was tremendous last year. He was among the very best wide receivers in football. I think he only had he had 4 games under 10 points, but only of those 4 games, only like two of them were below 5. But every other week, he's averaging like 11, 12, 13 points for you. I would say the Eagles still run almost like a West Coast run team, not as much as Shanahan or McVay. This one's different. This is more like wide open, Andy Reid, air raid kind of offense. It's very, very interesting ever since Doug Peterson's been gone. But anyway, kind of getting back to the point, I think A.J. Brown's really, really good. I think he's a bona fide number one receiver. I mean, if we're just being honest about it, I think getting him for $34 is really, it's not a deal. It's basically paying a little bit less than what he's probably worth. He's probably worth like 45. So you got him for a good amount of cash. But, I mean, he's a really good player. He'll probably be a top 5 receiver this year. I really like him. I could see, I don't know, maybe what did we do last year? Yeah, we were 4 yards short of 1,500. So maybe take a little bit of a downturn, maybe 1,300 yards, maybe 10 touchdowns, maybe. But still probably top 5 receiver. Still excellent player. Getting him for $34 is pretty good. Next, 44 nomination, $35 on DK Metcalf. So an old favorite of Patrick, someone who I've always thought very highly of, and funny enough, went to college with A.J. Brown at Ole Miss. I'm surprised you did not pick up Elijah Moore to get the trio of Ole Miss guys. But Metcalf kind of had a renaissance last year, especially playing for the Seahawks with new former backup Geno Smith becoming a Pro Bowler, like we all predicted. No one predicted that. No one saw that. But he had 141 targets, so he was in the top 3 players in targets. They were just force feeding him the ball. It was crazy. He had his second over 1,000-yard receiving, so not as many as 2020. 2020 had over 1,300 yards. Last year he only had about 1,000. And he had less touchdowns. He only had 6 touchdowns. I think it more had to do with playing opposite Tyler Lockett, who took some of that. And even though Geno was genuinely excellent, and Metcalf got his most targets, he got his most catches, he was used more on short routes rather than long routes. They use Lockett more on the long deep ball, which is kind of funny because you would think when you think of Metcalf, he's a much bigger, faster guy. But again, Metcalf's in his prime. He's another great player. He got his extension. I think he'll have a better year. I think I could see, like with Geno, the way he's playing, probably like 1,100 yards, maybe 8 touchdowns. Again, I've said before, the Seahawks were not as efficient as you think they were. It's kind of deceptive. But Geno, as long as Geno, even if Geno progresses, as long as you feed Metcalf, the offense will be fine. You really just got to force feed him. If you just throw the ball in his area, he's the closest thing to Calvin Johnson since Calvin Johnson retired. He's not as big. He's not as fast, but he's in the athletic. He's in like that area. Like Calvin Johnson was 6'5", ran a 4.3 40, and had a wingspan of 9 feet. Metcalf is 6'3", 225, runs a 4.35, and has like a 8-foot wingspan. So yeah, he's a really, really good player, and he's got really, really incredible athletic gifts. Everyone remembers that Buda Baker DK Metcalf play. So if the Seahawks really are going pass heavy, I think Metcalf's a tremendous wide receiver too. I think he'll probably be, he's definitely going to be a top 20 receiver. I don't really know how much I believe with the Seahawks going to be pass heavy, so we'll see. But he's a top 20 receiver. He's a bona fide number 2 receiver. Then at nomination number 46, so man, within like 6 nominations, you were taking 3 players. This was a good deal. This was genuinely a very good deal. $23, T. Higgins. So Higgins had a very good season last year. He was playing opposite to, obviously, Jamar Chase, but I think Higgins is also a number 1. He played all 16 games. Well, he missed close to the last game of the season, but that's because everything with DeMar Hamlin and everything. So 16 games, over 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns. He'll get around 70. He's literally had the same number of catches the last 2 years, 74. I think that's what we can just kind of like push him in, put him in for. So he's like, again, borderline top 20 receiver, maybe the ability for more if something were to happen to Chase. The only thing I would say with Higgins is he plays Robin to Jamar Chase's Batman. So there will be some weeks where he'll go like 7 catches, 120 yards, get you a touchdown. But there will be other weeks where he'll just be like, give you 6 catches for 47 yards, and that's just kind of it. There was a game where he had 0 catches because he was dealing with a hamstring injury. And I remember all this because he was on my team. He was my number 2 receiver last year. So yeah, I like T. Higgins. I think he's a bona fide number 2 receiver. He's a top 20 receiver in fantasy. A little bit of a roller coaster because it really depends on how much is the other team covering Chase. Are they rolling coverage over to him? So if they are, then Higgins isn't going to get loose. If not, they're playing them straight up. They're going to feed Chase. I still think Higgins is tremendous talent. Sarah won't like me saying this, but I think it's true. I would like to see him basically on his own team being the number 1 somewhere where he gets his shine, because I think, honestly, he's underutilized. I understand that Cincinnati is pass happy, but they're not as pass happy as I would like them to be. They're not as pass happy as, for example, Kansas City or Minnesota. I think they ought to pass the ball more because they have the best receiving trio in football. I think Chase is good enough, obviously, to be a number 1. He is the number 1. I think Higgins is good enough to be a number 1. And I think Boyd is good enough to be a number 2 somewhere. But as long as this is the hierarchy of these players, Higgins' upside's kind of capped just because Chase is there, and Chase is the one who's going to get fed, and Higgins will get, like, basically, I don't know, Higgins is kind of like the appetizer, Chase is the main course, and Boyd's the dessert. So, yeah, I like Higgins. I think this is a really good deal. I think he was worth more than this, probably closer to Metcalf and Brown than closer to Mike Evans, but I do get it just because, like, the upside's a little capped. 48 overall. nomination. $29. We finally make the jump for a running back. Look at that. Alexander Madison. I want to sing Alexander Hamilton. It's stuck in my brain now. So, as I mentioned before, I consider this kind of like Sarah's, a zero RB draft, because you don't really have a number one running back. Madison's more like a number two-ish running back. I've said, personally, you can go back and check, I've believed that Madison's been the better running back in the Minnesota backfield for 2 years now. I thought he was better than Dalvin Cook. He's just more efficient. I'm excited for him to get this opportunity. I can appreciate why Brian waited, got the receivers, and then broke, maybe not the bank, but got a good, solid return on investment, ROI, for Madison. This is probably, he got him probably at a little bit of a discount. I think Madison may be like a $35, $40 player just because he's got that backfield. You know, he's the bona fide star there on the backfield. You know they want to run the ball. So, I'm not really sure how much the Vikings are going to use him, if I'm being honest. I think they'll use him as much as they've used Dalvin Cook, but again, that's something we'll have to see. Can he hold up for 250 carries? What does his workload look like? How much of a timeshare is he in? These are why he doesn't go for as much as like some of the other guys who have like their number one, basically starting jobs on their own. Because, you know, the opportunity is there, and like I said, with running backs, it's less about talent and more about volume. So the opportunity is there for Madison to get that volume and be the guy, but we got to see it. He's got to show us. I will say when Cook has been out of the lineup and it's been the Madison show, he's been good. He's been very good. So he's just got to continue to do that, but we'll see if he can keep up that volume. That's the one question we don't know. I'm not too certain how much they're going to use him, because I do consider this to be a run-heavy offense. But maybe like 1,100 yards. I mean, they're going to use him in the passing game too, which makes it even more difficult to kind of like get an idea of what they want to do. But I could see like 1,100 yards, maybe 8 touchdowns, probably like 40 catches. We'll add another like 300 yards, which would give him like RB1 territory. But again, he's got to stay healthy the whole year, and that's the one bugaboo. I don't know. So we'll see. I like Madison. He's obviously going to be better than he was last year. I think he was like the 51st running back. So just by pure coincidence, he ought to be like a top 20 running back if he stays healthy all year, just based on volume. But he's got the opportunity to be a RB1 and make this RB0 draft work, because he is that talented. We've just never seen it before, so you get him at a discount for it. But I do like Alexander Madison. Then we finally stopped our spending spree. We've spent, well, maybe thrifty spending spree, and we waited. So all those picks were between nominations 40 through 48. So within 8 nominations, you took 4 of the players. We then waited till nomination number 68, and we checked in on, for $23, DJ Moore. Now, I had DJ Moore last year. I'm very cold on DJ Moore. I mean, people will tell you, oh, he's been like very good. He has a good upside. He was like the 24th ranked receiver. He's like a solid wide receiver 3. And for you, yeah, I mean, you're getting exactly what you paid for, essentially. He's your wide receiver 4. He's your flex. So, yeah, last year he's stuck in Carolina. Now he gets traded to Chicago, and you know Chicago's going to utilize him. I mean, I like DJ Moore. I think DJ Moore's a good player. I think he'll have a better season, obviously, than he had last year. I mean, last year was kind of rough. He only had like 63 receptions and under 1,000 yards. I think he'll get his 1,000 yards. I think he'll get like 4 touchdowns because that's usually what he gets. But I think he'll get his like 1,000 yards. I could see like 70, 75 receptions, which is kind of like Mike Evans territory. So he's a good player. I think you paid maybe a little bit too much for him, if I'm being honest. But nonetheless, I think, as your number 4, as your flex, in our league, that's a very good starter in our flex. So I understand it. Then at the 70th nomination, we paid $17. Oh, $17 for Justin Fields. Okay, I'm not really sure about this. So, I had Justin Fields to end the season. I know Ryan drafted him last year, later cut him, and then I picked him up, and Fields just goes bananas with his running. And that's kind of what you're like hoping for, because it's his rushing that makes him like such an excellent player. Like, I think, what was it? What was something crazy? There was a game against Detroit. He had like 167 yards passing and a couple touchdowns, and then he had another 147 yards rushing. It was like some crazy, stupid thing where he just like basically like blew up for like a month of just like his rushing numbers were just crazy. So, do I like Justin Fields? I mean, I like him. I started him last year. He was genuinely excellent down the stretch. He's a top 5 quarterback if he plays like that. It reminded me of Lamar Jackson's like MVP year, only even more rushing than Jackson. I still think Lamar Jackson is the most dangerous runner in the open field in football, but I think the most elusive runner is Justin Fields. Justin Fields might even be faster than Lamar, but he's just so freaking slick. So whereas Lamar might be Michael Vick, and Justin Fields might be like Randall Cunningham. The problem is, Fields is not at all accurate. I would say Lamar is leaps and bounds better than Fields. Lamar throws darts. Fields throws like rocks at like windows and kind of hopes to break the windows, but usually those throws end up hitting a door. He's not at all very accurate. He has no anticipation, 0 touch. I mean, it was easy for him at Ohio State. People would be like, oh, he was doing all these throws at Ohio State. I mean, yeah, he had like a bunch of first rounders at Ohio State who were easily open. It's kind of easy to throw to open targets. Case in point, you want to go back and look at Tim Tebow's teams, Percy Harvin, Aaron Hernandez. Like, if you see a guy's open, it's pretty easy to throw to him. In the NFL, you can't do that. You got to throw to windows. You got to throw people open, or you got to throw within a small window where that person comes open. You got to anticipate, and I don't see any of that from Fields. His passing is rough. So you're betting on the running. Let's just call it what it is, which makes it kind of hard for me because he also picked up DJ Moore. And I do like DJ Moore. I think he'll be better than last year because last year was a train wreck. But I don't know how much better because Fields does not throw the ball all that much. Fields is a runner. This offense is a running offense. This is an even more run-heavy offense than like Jalen Hurts runs at like Philly or Lamar Jackson runs at like Baltimore. This is like a classic Cam Newton-esque rushing offense. Now maybe DJ Moore can be your Travis Benjamin, I suppose. But I'm not really too hyped about you double dipping there. I think Fields is going to be, for better or worse, they're going to keep using his rushing because that's his number one asset by a lot. Not by a little, by a lot. I would just be worried about, again, always with the running quarterbacks, there's injury concerns. But, I mean, I think he's a good player. I think he's coming into his own. I don't think the Bears are doing right by him, if I'm being honest. I don't think Luke Getsy, who is the former quarterback coach for Aaron Rodgers, who's the offensive coordinator, is the right guy to basically develop him. And I'm not exactly certain they've done a very good job of surrounding him with help. Like, yeah, they got DJ Moore, and yeah, they traded for Chase Claypool, but this isn't exactly like I like DJ Moore, but DJ Moore's not exactly what I would need for like a guy like Justin Fields. What I'd really need or like is like an O line, and I do not trust the one in Chicago. Also, David Montgomery's gone, and now we're going to his backup, Khalil Herbert. I like Herbert. I thought Herbert was more efficient than Montgomery, but just goes to show how cheap Chicago kind of is on offense, even though they were so deep under the salary cap. And I guess maybe we're betting on the third year leap with Fields, so this can be his leap, but I don't know. I haven't seen his passing develop enough for me to be like good with it. Still, I think he's a good number one quarterback. I think he'll be right in the thick of the top 10 quarterbacks just based off his rushing. I won't go top five right now because, again, it depends on a variety of factors like how much is he throwing, how much is he running, is he healthy, and these are even more prevalent than a lot of other guys, even Lamar, because at least Lamar now has weapons. Fields has DJ Moore and then a bunch of like guys. Like I like Khalil Herbert. He's a guy. He's a starter, but he's still a guy. Like he's an efficient guy, but he hasn't shown himself to be like Aaron Jones efficient or like a very good running back. He's just been like, oh, I'm an efficient guy because I do something with my 70-ish carries. Can you keep that up for 300 carries? Then you can show me something. So I like Fields. 17s is a little rich for me, especially considering like Lauren got Josh Allen for 19. And like, I don't know. I think the upside's there, but I don't love it. There were some other guys I probably would have liked for the pay that you got them for. Let's see. 79th nomination, $10, Dalvin Cook. So, like, obviously Cook has gone from Minnesota. He had another 1,100-yard season. Last year, Robbie spent $70 on him in the draft. So Robbie went ham, and he was all right. He was still a top 10 running back just based off volume. He actually stayed healthy. First time for everything, I suppose. So 1,100 yards. He had 8 touchdowns. He had another almost 40 receptions with another 2 touchdowns. What are we feeling in New York? Here's what I like and what I don't like. So, Dalvin Cook got paid to go to New York. Not like huge paid, but he got like a 1-year deal. I think it's like $9 million guaranteed, I want to say. So, he's always been a good player. He's the number 8 running back in fantasy last year. Good player when he's healthy. Good player, but he's not terribly efficient. But they give him a ton of volume. I think for $10 is a good deal just because like we don't know how healthy Breece Hall is, and we can see if Dalvin can take that job. If I'm being honest, I don't have really all that much hope for Dalvin being terribly relevant towards the second half of the season because I think Breece Hall is better by a good margin. But $10 isn't a bad dice roll if Dalvin's healthy and Breece ain't. So, I mean, do I love it as your number 2 running back? I don't love it. He's more of like a flex, especially because we don't really know the role. I'm going to say like 600 yards, maybe 5 touchdowns. It really depends. Like, is Hall healthy? Hall healthy? Hall's probably the guy. Hall's not healthy yet or something happens, then they're going to lean on Dalvin. But I don't know how much work he's going to get initially. I think him and Hall are kind of in a timeshare until we figure out if either of these guys, if Hall's healthy or Dalvin shows himself to be the guy. So it's kind of weird. I think it's a good deal in that sense because running back with a pulse, he's been a good player, but not a great way to start the season because we don't really know too much. 90th nomination, $13, J.K. Dobbins. Okay, this one's kind of hard. Dobbins came back last year from a torn ACL, MCL, LCL. I don't like guys coming back from that kind of like major, huge surgery. It's not even like an ACL. It's like more than that. It's part of the reason why I didn't want Javonte Williams because like that's so much rehab. That's so much work on your knee. What ends up happening is you end up tearing your other knee typically. So yeah. Dobbins didn't tear his other knee, but he was gone for like a while. He came back week 3. They used him some. He was gone. He got basically re-aggravated his knee in week 6. And then he was gone till week 14. So we're kind of hoping he's healthy. We're hoping he's totally healthy. I think being another year removed from the Achilles, so now we're 2 years. Oh, God, 2 years since, well, not the Achilles, but since the tear, I think he'll be better. I think, I think Gus Edwards is an efficient player, but he also came back from his own ACL 2 years ago. So I think Gus Edwards would be more of the short line guy. I think Dobbins, so much of his game was predicated on his explosiveness in like short play areas and like short areas. I don't know if he has it, if I'm honest. Even when I saw him last year, he was more plotting than anything else. But is that due to injury? Was he totally healthy towards the end of last season? I don't know. So this is a very, very unknown. I will say Baltimore has a good offensive line. I will say Baltimore has been a run heavy team. I think with Todd Monken, they'll be a little bit more pass happy, but not like Minnesota, Kansas City, just adding more passes, sprinkling in more passes than rushes. I don't think it's a bad gamble to see if Dobbins has that explosion the price is a good price. $13 is a decent price for a starting running back, especially a starting running back that we know on a team that historically loves to run. But yeah, a lot of questions. Todd Monken is the offensive coordinator. We have a bunch of new receivers. Dobbins has to compete with, again, Gus Edwards, and we bring back Justice Hill. Lamar Jackson got paid. How much are we running the ball? How much are we throwing the ball? The best back in Baltimore is Lamar Jackson, unfortunately for Dobbins. So I like him. Again, just kind of capped because we now know he's playing next to who I consider to be the best rusher in football. I think Fields is up there, but I still think Lamar's the best just because Lamar, he's just like fast. If Fields is kind of elusive, Lamar's just fast. He can just outrun everybody. His long speed is some of the best in the NFL. You give him a little open space and he's gone. Like gone. You won't catch him. So, yeah, the thing for Dobbins is he's got to show that explosion and he's got to be able to take that. And I don't know if he's going to take more rushing opportunities from Lamar. That's hard to say. You took Algier at 148. You've now traded him. So we're going to kind of dig into your bench, which you've turned over quite a bit. I guess we'll come back to that. So 173, $4, Jaylen Warren. I'm a Steelers fan. I'm surprised Mac let you do this because he has Najee Harris. I like Jaylen Warren. I understand the Steelers are not sure of giving him like a giant workload because he's kind of a short guy coming out of Oregon State. I want to say, what is it? He's only like 5'8". He's shorter than I am. He's 5'8", 215. But like all of last year, I thought Warren was a better rusher than Najee Harris, better receiver than Najee Harris. Almost as good a blocker. I'll give Najee that. But just overall, the better back. And I noticed like the Steelers want to go to a bell cow back. That's what they do. They love a bell cow back. And Warren has pushed the envelope to the point where he's kind of like, I know you spent a first round pick on Najee Harris, but I think I'm better. I think I'm better. And when I watch Jaylen Warren, I'm like, I agree with you. I think you're better. It's just a matter of, do the Steelers let their eyes tell them what they think to be, what's apparent to everyone else is that's true, and then they let him get the opportunity. I don't know. Again, putting first-round capital on Najee Harris is a lot. Drafting running backs in the first round is a lot, and then to kind of say 3 years later, oh yeah, he's bad. Also, they run Najee into the ground. He's gotten so much work, more work in the last 2 years than any other running back in football. So, this is an upside play. This is an upside play on a player who I think is better than the guy in front of him. Can he hold up to the volume that the guy in front of him has had? I don't know, because he's such a short dude. But I don't mind it. I'm surprised again. I'm surprised that Mac let you do it, especially because like what is this? This was like what 173. So I guess at that point he'd spent most of his money because he got Elijah Mitchell and he took Brian Robinson for cheap. So it kind of makes sense, I guess. But yeah, I really like Jalen Warren a lot. I think there's something there. I think he's the best running back in that backfield. And I think the Steelers will take another step this year. So yeah, I like that. I guess we'll kind of skip the end of your draft and just go into like the changes on your bench now. Picked up Kendry Miller, third round pick, TCU, rookie. He's questionable. He's going to get some rushes while Alvin Kamara is suspended for 3 games, compete with Jamal Williams. I don't know how much he's going to play. He's got a hamstring injury already. I think he's like the backup behind Jamal because there's no one really else. I mean, there's like Tony Jones and Kirk Merritt. But yeah, he's also dealing with like a knee sprain. I mean, I like Kendry. I don't mind taking rookie running backs. It's just kind of hard because the backfield's kind of crowded, and now we know Kamara will definitely be healthy come week 4 because he hasn't played. So, I mean, I guess for a short-term like play, it's kind of cool holding on to him. But as a Kamara owner, there's a reason why I didn't pick up Kendry because I mean, I think Jamal Williams is kind of the backup, and Kendry's just kind of there. But maybe there's something. We then picked up. Marvin Mims Jr., who is the number 2 currently for the Denver Broncos because Jerry Jeudy's hurt. Right. Okay. Trying to process in my brain, like, what's going on? So, yeah, Tim Patrick tore his ACL, or Achilles, and then KJ Hamler has, like, a brain thing, a head thing, and then Jalen Virgil, like, hurt his knee. So... No, KJ Hamler has a heart condition. There we go. But, I mean, Mims, I'll give you credit for this. Mims is the first pick of the Sean Payton era. He was the guy he wanted. He's the number 2 receiver. He was a good player at Oklahoma. How good is Russell Wilson? He wasn't as bad as you think last year, but he was pretty bad. So, can Sean Payton fix him? I mean, I got to see it to believe it at this point because that's how much of a bad taste in my mouth last year. I don't think Mims is a bad upside play, though. There's a possibility. There's a realm of possibility where Mims is the number 2 receiver in Denver until Jeudy comes back and maybe outshines him and Sutton just because, like, he kind of breaks through. I mean, I don't mind taking a shot. Rookie tight ends are really hard. Rookie receivers also have a hard time. It's very rare you get super duper rare you get the Odell Beckham year. Most of the time you just get, like, a decent year. But, sometimes you hit like Justin Jefferson, Odell Beckham Jr. It happens. So, I just don't know if this is the right offense for that. I don't know how much they're going to use him. But I guess you're going to know real soon because Jerry Jeudy's gone. So, if they're not feeding him all that much early on, then you'll just be like, well, it's not going to happen later because it's going to get worse. So, I don't mind it for like a upside play for now. Then we traded Tyler Algier for Treylon Burks. I mean, I still think Tennessee was dumb in trading A.J. Brown and then using that pick. It's like, oh, we'll just replace him with Treylon Burks, and that'll be our wide receiver 1. And I was just like, okay, we're just going to throw a rookie out there with, like, nobody to help him. Like, Justin Jefferson has Adam Thielen. DK Metcalf has Tyler Lockett. Terry McLaurin has Jamison Crowder. Notice a theme. Like, you gonna help a guy out? Mike Evans had freaking Vincent Jackson. Like, superstar receivers. Stephon Diggs had Adam Thielen too. Like, come on. Superstar receivers, guys who become superstars, usually have a pro. Like, not as good a player in their prime, but usually a good player. A good, solid player who they learn from and they pick up from. Keenan Allen. Mike Williams has Keenan Allen. Like, come on. So, Burks wasn't going to do that last year. Tennessee was like, oh, we're just going to kind of trot him out. He's going to figure it out. And Robbie drafts him, and he's like, oh, yeah, he looks so talented. And I'm like, bet. And he struggled real hard. He had a real hard time because when you're like a 21-year-old kid and you got like a 30-year-old cornerback man with like a mortgage and like a family, and he's playing you straight up, you gotta he's gonna bully you, and no one else is really gonna teach you how to route run or the nuances of leverage or how to read defenses or how to read coverage. Burks had no help. I knew he would fail. So I'm happy for him in the sense that DeAndre Hopkins is now there to teach him some of the nuance, to help him, because what Tennessee did to him last year was a disservice to him. He was set up to fail. So I think this year will be better because Hopkins will help him and take some of the coverage off him. But this is still a very, very low target share offense. I think maybe he can become a flex, but I gotta see it because Tennessee is very, very run heavy. Like very, very run heavy. Nothing has changed. They love to run the ball. So, A.J. Brown was there once upon a time, and he was a good number two receiver-ish. But, I think that's Hopkins' role. I don't think that's Burks' role. Can they sustain two fantasy relevant wide receivers? You got to show me it, because they love to run Derrick Henry. But, he's a talented player. He's a second-year receiver. He had a rough rookie year. You trade a handcuff that didn't help you. So I understand it. I don't love him as a player, but I get it. Then we picked up Chuba Hubbard. Okay. So I picked up Chuba Hubbard. That's weird. You didn't pick up Ty Chandler. I guess I'll mention that later. But yeah, Hubbard is the change of pace back behind Miles Sanders, who the Panthers paid. So I like Hubbard. He's a solid player. He had a hard time last year because once Christian McCaffrey got traded from the 49ers, Deontay Foreman was the starter, and they let Deontay Foreman go. They signed they signed Miles Sanders to be the starter, and now Hubbard's like the backup. So he's a decent he's a decent flex if something happens to Miles Sanders. Decent, I say, because offensive line's not great. It's just like he's a starting running back, and I know he'll get touches. Kind of flex. If he plays, but he's not all that valuable to you in that sense because he's in a low efficiency offense with a rookie quarterback. And I'll kind of go over that in a minute. So, what do we think? Well, here's the funny thing about your team, which is also why I waited to do it last. Your team is very, very similar to my team last year. So, I ended last year, Justin Fields was my starting quarterback. Instead of A.J. Brown, I had Tyreek Hill. My number 2 wide receiver was T. Higgins. My number 3 wide receiver was DJ Moore. I had Aaron Jones as my starting running back to Alexander Mattison for you. Team was very similar. Very, very similar. And I'll be honest, it was not good. Like Brian Robinson Jr. was my number 2 back. It was not good. It was very, tough. You can go back and look at my team and be like, oh, Dylan, you made the playoffs and you were right in the thick of things. And my rebuttal to that would be this. So in a sense, I did make the playoffs last year. I think I was the number 3 seed, but I was also one of the lowest scoring teams. Yeah, I wasn't in the top 9 scoring teams in the playoffs. I kind of skirted in because Tyreek was so good, so good for me. There would be weeks where he would just carry me by himself. But if he did not carry me, it was a hard go, man. Or there was the time when Tyreek wasn't doing it, Justin Fields would carry me. The issue was I needed Fields and Jones and Tyreek all to go off in the playoffs to win. And that obviously did not happen. I lost in the first round. Because the thing I don't like really with receiver-led teams is there's a higher floor, but there's a lower ceiling. Sometimes you run into a team like Andre, who's just hot, and they just kind of skirted into the playoffs, but their running backs are getting fed like wild beasts, and they're just getting fed, and you just run to a dragon, and they just roar flames at you, and then you're dead. And, that's real frustrating when you feel like you have a good team. So all of that's to say is, I think you have a good team, but I don't think this was exactly your best draft in the sense that we had a conversation about the drafts a few years ago, and I talked about it's important to take upside. I feel like this team is kind of like capped on upside. Like it's not great upside. Like yeah, Madison could be like a top 10 like running back. And yeah, I think Fields could be maybe a top 5 quarterback, but you need kind of all of those things to happen in order to push for a title. There's been one team without a top 3 running back to win a title, and that was Holly back in year 3, who won a title because Odell Beckham Jr. had the craziest rookie year we've ever seen. And she had the number 10 running back on her squad, but she had everything else. She had Aaron Rodgers as her quarterback, number 1 fantasy quarterback, number 1 fantasy wide receiver, number 2 fantasy wide receiver, number 1 fantasy tight end at the time, which is Julius Thomas. Like, everywhere else she was stacked except running back, and it worked. I haven't seen it since then. I don't know that Madison and Dobbins are going to be top 3 fantasy running backs, and you're going to kind of need that in the playoffs. I think the rub is just like, I look at teams that like Robbie and Justin both kind of waited with you. They were waiting in the weeds to like spend the money. I would say it's very clear to me that Robbie and Justin have not only deeper teams, but more upside on their teams than yours. Like, yeah, I think A.J. Brown is genuinely excellent. He's a great number 1, and I think DK Metcalf is good. Garrett Wilson has the opportunity to be the best receiver in fantasy. There is a realm where Aaron Rodgers makes Garrett Wilson Devontae Adams. Okay, there's a realm for that. I don't know if that realm will come true. I don't know what the percentage is. Maybe like 15, maybe 10, maybe lower. But there's a realm. There is no realm where like DK Metcalf or T. Higgins or DJ Moore or even A.J. Brown are the number 1 fantasy receiver. There's just no realm. Like, I don't really know how else to put it. So, I mean, maybe Fields could be the number 1 fantasy quarterback if he has an MVP season, but I got to see more from him throwing. Like, as much as I love Lamar as a rusher, he still threw for 30 touchdowns his MVP season. I got to see Fields throw for like 200 yards a game before we even get there. So, and the O-line I still don't trust, and that's kind of the reason why I don't like DJ Moore, because him being in Chicago, like, you've had Darnell Mooney the last couple of years, and you try to, trade him, or you think he's a good player. I mean, he thinks he's all right, but he just doesn't get much volume. He doesn't touch the ball enough, and it's like they don't use him in the red zone, like at all. I don't know if they're going to use DJ Moore in the red zone, like at all. So, that's not great. I don't love that, especially on a running team. I mean, I like Jaylen Warren to take over for maybe Najee Harris later, but like the other stuff, I don't know why he didn't get Ty Chandler, because if like Alexander Madison is the guy and something happens to him, then Chandler would be the replacement. I guess if something happens to Miles Sanders, Hubbard plays and he's the starter, but it's not exactly like a great starting role per se. Like, I think the Minnesota running back, if whoever the starter is much more valuable than the Panthers running back, whoever the starter is. I don't really understand the reasoning for that. Again, I mentioned it with Burks already. I'm just kind of down on Burks. I just thought he was like, he's a good player in shorts, but like he's got like good bursts, but he was always injury prone in college. His hands aren't that great. He doesn't have great separation. And now he's in a low volume passing offense where he's maybe the number 2 in an offense that's never supported 2 fantasy receivers. I don't know. It's just stuff like that where I'm kind of like, why didn't we get like some of the rookie guys? Or like, I know Justin was stealing some of the rookies, like Zay Flowers I like, or Jordan Addison. Like, it's just kind of, there's not a lot of upside here. I mean, I'm sure you'll figure it out. You'll hit free agency real hard. You'll make the playoffs. I'm not worried about that. It's just, I don't know if you got the horses. I don't know if you got the star players to make a title run. I guess you can trade for one at some point. You'll have to basically turn over the whole bench and find something. But even then, you're probably going to have to move one of the receivers. And this is all hoping, like, in the realm of everything goes right for you. Again, it's weird for me because I had a very similar team to yours last year. So we had T. Higgins, we had DJ Moore, we had Justin Fields. I think I traded away DJ Moore even because I was so sick of it. And then I had Tyreek Hill, who was better than A.J. Brown. And Aaron Jones was better than Alexander Madison, as well as Dalvin Cook. So let's not pretend like, oh, Alexander Madison will just usurp that role. Aaron Jones was better than both of them last year. Both of them. So, like, Brian Robinson was obviously better than J.K. Dobbins. And my team was still just like, I had a tough time. I mean, I made the playoffs, but I was not at all that confident I would go anywhere. And I kind of feel that way about this team. Like, I think the team's good. I think the team will make the playoffs. I think your team has a higher floor than quite a few of the teams in the league. But if we're talking titles, if we're talking championship aspirations, you need some upside. And I don't know how much extra upside we can bake in. Like, I already think A.J. Brown's going to be a top 5 receiver. I already think Metcalf and Higgins are top 20-ish receivers. I guess the only upside is, like, Madison and Fields. And then maybe, like, someone on the bench kind of conjures into something. Maybe Jalen Warren takes the job from Najee, but even if that happens, I'm not sure he's like a top 10 running back kind of deal. I still think it'd be like a timeshare or something. I don't know. The team's good. The floor's good. I'm sure you'll make the playoffs. I'm sure it'll be a top 4 seed. But I just have a hard time. I can't see it right now. That's the thing. I don't know who it will be. I don't know when it will happen. But I can imagine a play. I think the most likely scenario, I won't even say imagine a place. I think the most likely scenario is you run into someone in the playoffs who gets super hot with some running back somewhere, and they just kind of blow you out of the water, and then it's just like back to the drawing board. It's kind of like that, because I just have a hard time. I have a hard time believing a team built around wide receivers with like no top 5 running back winning a title. Like, and that's what we're talking. We're not talking like make the playoffs. We're not talking like have a good year. We're talking championship. And I don't see it. I think this team's draft, I think the draft kind of, instead of letting the draft come to you, you kind of chase the draft. Because, like, if you had let the draft come to you, kind of, I think you would have spent the money on someone at running back, like, that you believed in or that you thought would be, like, able to turn into something. Like, I could even say Justin didn't spend all that much money. There's a place where Ramondre Stevenson is top 3 running back. I mean, if he's leading the league in touchdowns in a run-happy offense, that's a possibility. You know, like, Robbie took Josh Jacobs, who was the number 1 fantasy running back last year. We just saw it. He led Eileen's team to the finals. What happens when you run into the number 1 fantasy running back in football, and they just kind of, what are you going to do? Are your wide receivers going to be good enough? I don't know. And I don't see a way for Madison to be the number 1 fantasy running back. I suppose if everything, like the perfect scenario happens, but even for Dalvin Cook, that never happened. He was never the number 1 fantasy running back. There was no Cam Akers. Not Cam Akers. Todd Gurley. There was no Todd Gurley, Austin Eckler type of year. There was no Josh Jacobs type of year. No LeGarrette Blount, like, leading the league in touchdowns type of year. I think Madison's a good player, but it's a pass-happy offense. I don't know. All of this is to say, I know this one's longer than everybody else's, but that's why I wanted to wait. I think you have a good team. I don't want you to be like, oh, Dylan is down on my team and he's talking smack. No, I do. I think you have a good team. I think your team is much deeper than my team. I think you'll make the playoffs. I think you'll be in the hunt, but I don't love the upside. I feel like you're going to run into somebody with like maybe Lauren backs into the playoffs with like 6 wins, and then Nick Chubb and Derrick Henry go crazy. Like, I have a much easier time seeing that happen than I do seeing your wide receivers all kind of just like throwing a party and like beating the best of the best. Because I've seen it one time, and realistically, with Holly's team, that was very, very like not only weird, but also Odell Beckham was just like a freaking monster, like better than any of your wide receiver seasons that I've like seen. Like he missed like the first 2 games, and he had like 1,800 yards and like 14 touchdowns, like a Randy Moss on the Patriots kind of season ridiculousness. So, like, I think for the playoffs, he averaged like 125 yards and 2 touchdowns. It was something stupid, like almost 30 points a game. So, and she still only beat me by like maybe 8 points in the first round because my team was so stacked. But that's the kind of thing you would need in order to beat some of the very best teams. Yeah, very interesting build. RB0 team. Can it win a title? I've never really seen it. I mean, again, exception I suppose is Holly in this scenario. But usually teams with running backs are the ones who push for titles. I guess you could be the exception, but I just have a hard time seeing it just because I don't see the upside. Even in Holly's year, Odell Beckham Jr. had all of that upside. Is Traylon Burks going to have an Odell Beckham Jr. year? I don't see that. Marvin Mims, I don't really see that. Higgins, Moore, Metcalf, nah. A.J. Brown's got to deal with Devontae Smith. I mean, A.J. Brown's a great player, but Devontae Smith is cutting into some of that playtime. So, what do I give you? I guess a B-. Again, I think your floor is high, but I don't know about the upside, man. We got like what? I guess we got like a couple rookies, like Mims and Miller now. We got Jalen Warren and Burks as the second-year backs, but that's not like great upside. I'd really prefer like some high-end like rookie guys or something. And even if we didn't get that, some like high-level handcuffs. Like, I don't know who's high-end, like Elijah Mitchell or like Joshua Kelly, something like that. I don't know, Brian. I'm going to give it a B-. I think the team's good. I think you'll make the playoffs. But I don't see championship aspirations for your team. I see like, if we get to the semis, then it was better than we kind of expected. I kind of see you as being a first-round team that gets knocked out because you have a high seed and you run into a hot team. And that hot team just has running backs that drown you. So I'm sure you'll work free agency and everything, and if something happens, you'll figure it out. But I don't love teams that are wide receiver centric. I especially don't love teams that remind me of my own team, where I felt like was below average and kind of got into the playoffs through gritting my teeth and luck, and then got blown out, and I was like, well, that was very unsatisfying. That wasn't great, but that was the kind of year I had last year, and I think you're setting yourself up for the same kind of year. So, I don't know. You got a lot to figure out. I'm sure you're going to have to work that trade market to find your star running back somewhere, because, yeah, you're going to need that. But B-, not bad. Kind of like a first-round team that gets knocked out.